West Africa has entered a moment of deep unease as the economic community of West African states warns the region is facing what is described as a state of emergency after a string of military coups, attempted coups, and worsening security conditions. The ECOWAS Commission President Omar Touray made the declaration during a session of the Mediation and Security Council in Abuja, noting that the spate of unconstitutional power grabs, most recently a thwarted takeover attempt in Benin Republic, threatens democratic gains across the sub-region and could unravel years of progress on governance and stability. Member states are now grappling with political fragility, weakening institutions, and regional insecurity on multiple fronts. For Nigeria, this moment lands close to home, only next door. In response to the attempted coup in Benin Republic, the Nigerian Senate declared the deployment of troops and air support as part of a regional standby force acting under ECOWAS mandate, highlighting Abuja's role as both a neighbor and security anchor in West Africa. At the same time, recent coups in Guinea-Bissau, the lingering instability across the Sahel, and the exit of several junta-led states from ECOWAS deepens the questions about the bloc's ability to enforce democratic norms, protect its citizens, and sustain regional cooperation. Now, this development are more than diplomatic footnotes. They shape how Nigeria's experience security, trade, and also political influence across the borders are.
Now, to help us make sense of what this, and I quote, state of emergency means for West Africa in general, but for Nigeria in particular, we are joined by Alexander von Rügen, a global affairs policy analyst, and Dennis Amachree, a national security analyst. Their perspectives will help us unpack the geopolitical and practical implications for stability in our neighborhood. Let's welcome them to Breakfast Central. Mazino.
Welcome very much, gentlemen. Now, Alexander, I'm going to start with you, Alexander, before I come to Dr. Amachree. Alexander, ECOWAS leaders have described the current situation as an emergency. Now, in practical terms, do you think that this is what it is? And how strategic how strategic is Nigeria placed in all of this? Or strategically is Nigeria placed in all of this?
Well, the term emergency, I think, is befitting because it's existential for ECOWAS to remain in power. Nigeria being the lead country and the largest in the union has to assert itself. And this recent occurrence in Benin is a case in point. It was barely a coup. It was a handful of military personnel that took over a TV station. But they had to assert themselves that they would react to the threat of a coup in a neighboring country.
For you, Mr. Dennis Amachree, I mean, this is a bit of a dent when it comes to Nigeria's strength. I think my question for you is, how does this affect Nigeria's ability to respond and, of course, take its role when we take a look at the coups that are affecting diplomacy and the influence within the region?
Thank you very much. Actually, the president of Nigeria is the chairman of the ECOWAS. And of course, when things like this are happening very close to home, I think the response was good. You cannot afford to allow a coup. There are coups that have been going on, about 5 of them been going on throughout West Africa. And if this one is very close to call, it's close to home. And you can see how the president reacted. Don't forget that there was an attempted coup in Nigeria, and of course, with the wave of coups that is now sweeping across West Africa, just like in the 60s, we have a time when the whole of West Africa was ruled by military rule. So this trend is starting all over again, and I think being the chairman of ECOWAS and of course trying to make sure that this does not happen again, the Nigerians reacted, because it will affect us more than it will affect anybody else. Nigeria is the biggest country in West Africa, and any change of government there will be very, very disastrous.
Dr. Amachree, I want to come to you still, and let's talk about relationships now. Let's talk about the relationship between the rest of democratic West Africa and the new Sahel bloc. We've seen situations where certain postures seem to indicate flexing of muscles, let's put it so. So what's our relationship going to be like now, whether it's Nigeria versus the Sahel bloc or the rest of democratic West Africa and the Sahel bloc? What should we be looking at happening? So far, we've seen some movement or agitation when it comes to a Nigerian asset landing in Burkina Faso and all the tongue wag that has caused. What's your take on this?
Well, you know that Nigeria, when they say ECOWAS, it is Nigeria they're talking about. Because when, the coup in Benin was foiled by some assistance from, they said, Ghana, Ivory Coast, and Sierra Leone. You know, they sent some troops. But majorly, it was Nigerian fighter jets that were flying all over the place and then maybe scaring the hell out of the coup plotters. It's Nigeria, actually. So even when this happened, the first time when Niger Republic had a coup, remember, as as chairman of the ECOWAS, he announced that they were going to, invade Niger Republic, and they gave them 72 hours. And of course, the Nigerian Senate and others, other Nigerian people spoke against it, because this is our neighbor, and, going there with arms and invading the country is not going to be the best solution. And that has remained like that. It simmered down. There was no invasion, nothing happened, and stuff like that. And of course, you're talking about the jet that landed in Burkina Faso. I don't know if that jet has been allowed to travel back to where it was going to, but they stopped it. And it shows you that the relationship between these AES countries and Nigeria is very, very dicey. And I think that Nigeria has to do more, because you cannot, rule, or should I say, bring all the West African countries together by arms and ammunition. It has to be by diplomatic means, and I think that's the way to go.
Okay.
Now, I'll go to you, Mr. von Rügen. We see, despite what's taking place, we still see great power regions and countries still finding an interest in the Western region, despite the current crises that are taking place right now. So we look at the power play, and we look at the power economies that are still invested. How do these responses shape the response of the West in the crises right now?
It falls back on the amount of coups that have been in Africa. In fact, it's called the coup belt.
Oh, wow.
There's been so many of them. There's been 11 successful coups since 2020. Primarily, they've been in Francophone Africa. If we want to look back on colonial times, the French were probably the worst colonialists of all. Case in point, Haiti. The fact that most of the coups have happened in Francophone Africa also speaks for itself. But the West is gathering now, because when power sense weakness, they tend to take advantage of it. Africa is rich in resources.
Yeah.
They're poor in governance. They need assistance. I think what they're reaching out for is in a neo-colonialist era, they're looking for the best deal, and they're making bad choices. Russia currently right now with the Africa Corps or the former Wagner forces are assisting the Sahel Union, primarily Niger, Burkina Faso, and Mali, with defending themselves against jihadists. They amassed for that reason. Ironically, Nigeria has its own problem with Boko Haram and Islamic terrorists coming in through border countries and causing havoc in your eastern provinces. Nigeria has been, criticized here in reacting to a coup in Benin, but not reacting militarily to conflict within their own country on the alleged Christian genocide and the threats made by President Trump. They have a political dilemma right now for asserting themselves as a lead nation in West Africa. Mm-hmm. And I think they're desperate right now to make some attempts to prove that they are effective. This quick military response, jets being sortied across Benin quickly, was a show of strength. Yet they had a brigadier general that was captured and assassinated a month ago in the eastern provinces, and there was no military reaction.
Right.
There was analysis. There was a lot of talking. There was condolences. But how is it a brigadier general can be captured and executed within the country and not stimulate a military reaction, unless, of course, there's corruption from within? That's a question we have to ask ourselves.
Now, Mr. Van Rügen, it's quite interesting. It's quite interesting that you make mention of that, because interestingly enough, this was a question that was raised in Abuja to the foreign minister, Yusufa Tugar. And of course, the question there was, Nigeria's got their own problems internally. Is Nigeria the right candidate or the right big brother to hold hands with Benin and lead them out of this situation? This is a question because of what you've just said. I'd like to get your opinion on that. Is Nigeria of course they are the head of ECOWAS right now, so they have to respond, but are they the right candidate or the right nation right now to partner with Benin and lead them out of this situation?
Are you asking the question to me?
Yes, sir.
Oh, well, I don't think there's another choice. Nigeria is the largest, they hold the seat for ECOWAS. They're the largest nation. They have the largest military. They would be the appropriate response team. But there's so much confusion going around in the area, such as in the Sahel, such as criticisms from President Trump to invade the country with guns a-blazing. Well, we all know that's President Trump's rhetoric. Mm-hmm. He would need a UN resolution to do that. The only way he could enter Nigeria is if it's not state-sponsored and there is a genocide going on, there'd be a resolution required, and they could intervene through UN forces and American forces. That's the threat was made. But it wasn't really a threat. It was a strong warning. It was, if you can't fix your own problem, we'll come in and fix it for you. Here's the irony. Nigeria's gone to France, Macron, the colonial country that has all the problems with coups, for assistance. I find that ironic.
Right.
France has been kicked out of Niger, Chad, Mali, Burkina Faso. They want to assert themselves because they felt the French were taking advantage of them with C.H. Frank, the management of half their foreign exchange assets. There was a lot of reasons for it. France is reinventing itself in these neo-colonial times to now be an advisor and assistance and logistics, offer surveillance and military consulting for these countries to govern themselves. They're reinventing themselves. They have to establish a renewed credibility in the area because they've lost it. African nations have to make a decision. What is the best way to go? The Russian solution in the Sahel is putting a Band-Aid on a bleeding artery. That's a short-term solution. The Chinese, who have invested in Africa, have created death spiral financing by supplying substandard infrastructure. And they bring in their own labor. They don't help Africans establish trade. Okay, so to get out of this slump, Africa needs to reassess on multilateral fronts how to move forward and who they want to partner with in that trade. And I call it trade now because the aid packages have evaporated. That's one thing President Trump initiated when he dissolved US aid and he defunded the UN. We all know the UN is an impotent organization when it seems to curbing violence. They come in as advisors and so-called peacemakers. They're not allowed to shoot back unless someone shoots at them, yet they can witness atrocities happening in front of them. That's, in my book, unacceptable.
Mm-hmm.
Alexander, that's a very interesting response here, and I want to piggyback off of that. I don't know if anybody is noticing what's at play here, the bigger geopolitical relationships or lack of relationships that's happening. We have the Sahel nations, which were mostly French colonized, rejecting these vestiges of French colonialism and allying themselves with countries like Russia. And here we have Nigeria. Even if we still fraternize with the French, we still have a partnership that seems to be budding with America. And it's beginning to seem like there is that relationship, or, you know, it's funny where you have the Russia-America thing going on here within Africa itself. Am I the only one who's seeing this? Dr. Amachree, what do you think?
Oh, you see, the geopolitical dance is really good right now. And many people say that it's a new scramble for Africa.
Exactly.
You know, a new scramble for Africa because all the superpowers, so to say, are trying to take a grab, or should I say, have a bite in Africa, which is, of course, till today, the richest continent with all the natural resources that the world needs. You know, and after independence, some of the colonial masters were still hanging around their colonies, so to say, and you see that some of the independence was actually on paper, like the French countries. You know, the CFA franc that the West African Francophone countries are using is tied to the French franc. And in fact, the Central Bank of France is the one controlling whatever happens in the West African countries. And it is so deep that they are really tied to the apron strings of France. Now, when we look at it very, very closely, these countries are waking up and they are saying, no, we cannot, you know, continue this. And France was not diplomatic enough. It was still using the, should I say, the colonial style in dealing with these guys. These people have to find out how much uranium is costing in the world market and how much France is taking from them and how much they are giving to the countries. So that was the case in Niger Republic. And of course, Burkina Faso, Mali, if you look at it very closely, you find out that most of the countries that have just had coups are French-speaking. They're all French-speaking. And it's a real hit on the French president, because I think if he does not take care, if he runs an election today, he might lose, because most of the colonies that were under France are going away and they're leaving. And I think he's worried too. So that's why we even had this story about whether it was France that asked Nigeria to go and fly over Benin Republic, but it was an ECOWAS mandate.
Okay.
So I think everybody is trying to catch a piece of the pie. China is there, ready to do their own in their own way. Russia is
so Dr.
looking at
Amachree,
the Francophone countries.
So Dr. Amachree,
of course,
Dr. Amachree,
Nigeria
now
is
with what you have just said, sir, with what you have just said, with everybody trying to grab a piece of the West African pie, we know what the countries allied with Russia, that's the Sahel belt or the Coups belt, as von Rügen has put it, what they stand to gain when it comes to resources. But with Nigeria, what exactly might they have to gain if they were to be allied or be successful at grabbing that West African strategic point of Nigeria? What could Nigeria give back? What are they eyeing, in quote, in Nigeria?
I didn't understand your question very well.
Now,
you're saying that what is Nigeria going to gain, or what are the big powers going to gain?
How strategically placed is Nigeria in all of this, in everything going on, for any country that is interested in grabbing the Nigerian instance? Any country that is interested in allying with Nigeria?
Okay, like we said earlier, Nigeria is the largest country in West Africa. It has the largest population of black people all over the world. And of course, it's loaded with natural resources. It's a very, very rich country. But the problem is that, of course, the riches have been frittered away, whereby some individuals are even richer than the country, or they are very rich, all combined, while the country, people are still moving in squalor. Now, it's not as bad as some of the West African countries, but Nigerian government need to address the frustration, the insecurity, all these attacks we are having from insurgents and bandits and stuff like that. They are all in for the natural resources. The problem with Nigeria is not religion. It is not ethnicity. It is the very, very robust and rich criminal economy that is going on right now in Nigeria. The criminal economy that is going on in Nigeria. And what is going on now is something that either the government take care of it or control it where the people will gain, or foreign countries are ready. In fact, some Chinese were even arrested in Zamfara State, where they've come in and they were shipping out gold and stuff like that. France is still looking for new markets where they can trade, and they try to align with Nigeria. The United States itself, many people have said it, that it's not just because they are trying to fight against Christian genocide. It is because of maybe the rare earth minerals and stuff like that are in there, and it could be a cover to enter into Nigeria, because Nigeria itself is not concentrating on giving it to their American allies. So these are geopolitics that is going on, and I think Nigeria need to sit back and look at it properly.
Okay. Now, Mr. von Rügen, I'd like to also just piggyback off of that question, because I'd like to hear from your view. But I'd like to structure it in a way where, outside of us just maybe looking at Nigeria because we are in the West, there are so many different governing bodies within Africa. We've got ECOWAS, and we've also got the African Union that tends to remain a bit silent and stagnant when it comes to situations like this. Outside of what Nigeria can achieve, because it is a continental kind of partnerships. You did mention the partnerships. So I'd like to hear from you, from an African standpoint, if we do get that partnership right, what is it that, what's the shift that we can expect from Africa as a whole?
8% of the current world's population. The birth rate in Africa is 4 times greater than it is in the Western world right now. I know in Canada, for example, the average couple produces 1.1 children. In Africa, it's 4.3. Even in China, it's below 1 now.
Wow.
And depending on what country you are in Europe, it ranges between 1 and 1.5. In the Middle East, it's the only one that is higher, but it's still half of what Africa is. So from a global perspective, Africa is growing faster than any other area on the planet. It also has the most conflicts of anywhere on the planet. There's over 50 conflicts raging in Africa right now. So as a union, it has to demonstrate it can govern itself. I think, and this is the taboo topic, we have to look at institutionalized corruption. We have to look, is Nigeria afraid of Trump getting involved in helping them clean up the problem? Because he did offer assistance, although his bedside manner is sometimes a little threatening, but he offered assistance. But when you get assistance from America, it will expose a lot of the local corruption. And I think people are fearful of that. Whereas with France, they catered to corruption. The CF franc enabled the elites in Africa to move their money to Europe and hide it and stay in power. And that's, that's a business model, but it's not a sustainable one, especially with the growing Gen Zers that are frustrated and feel they don't have a future. African countries have over 70% of their population under 25 or 30 years of age. This is a generation that's never grown up without an internet. They're well informed. They can amass themselves in the millions by the click of a cell phone button on the internet. And if you look at the latest uprisings throughout Africa, Kenya, Madagascar, Mozambique, soon to be, Tanzania, you can have Islamic jihadists creating terrorist situations, but the Gen Zers are the ones, they're not jihadis, they're not terrorists. They want a future, they're African. And they're sick and tired of the institutionalized corruption that ignores them and their rights. So until all of that is resolved, there's many facets to these problems. They have to be attended to, and it's complicated, and it's sectoral, and there's a lot of moving parts. So to give you a one answer to your question is impossible. It's multifaceted. It will take a concerted effort, but there has to be a willingness. And when corruption stands in the way, unfortunately, those decisions are made by how much money is going to go in my pocket before I vote on something, as opposed to what can I do for my people to ensure peace and a thriving nation.
Mr. von Rügen, my last question would be to you, and it's on posture, and it's going to go back to the instance of the C-130 in Burkina Faso. Many people have said that perhaps maybe it's just a sense of quelling what they call ideological contagion, telling that, hey, we've got our finger on this. We could do anything we want if we choose to as a West African superpower. So what does that say for the remaining democratic nations in West Africa? Are we trying to assert ourselves as still dominant over whatever might be happening in the Coup belt?
Well, to land a C-130 Hercules without a plan is a plan to fail. The narrative has changed on this story. I'm hearing stories that it was on a major maintenance trip to Portugal. Okay, well, I'm a pilot.
Oh, nice.
Protocol dictates you have a crew of a pilot, co-pilot, a flight engineer, and maybe an extra party on the plane. Why were there 11 soldiers on the plane? Were they all mechanics? Was it a security detail to protect the plane in Portugal, which is a non-threatening nation? And why did they have to land in Burkina Faso? The narrative has changed on this, and I don't know the answer but it seems to be people are scrambling for a plausible excuse. If it was to show power in Burkina Faso, I'm sure Captain Traore would have laughed at that.
Well, thank you for that response. I think I'll buy that.
I mean, gentlemen, thank you both for helping us slice through the headlines and reveal the deeper stakes for this part of the continent. And as West Africa confronts this emergency, the question of governance, security, and collective action will shape the well-being of millions, including our own citizens at home and abroad.
Once again, thank you very much, gentlemen, for joining us for our last session today for Breakfast Extra. Thank you.
Thank you.
My pleasure.